Well, what do you think? It's done. Bear, I do love you, brother, but you got to stay out of this one. The reason I have a fence in an herb garden is primarily to keep the dogs out. Namely the one that wants to pee on things. Hey there, darling. Welcome back to Rooster and Refuge Farm. Maya was out here until dark last night putting the fence up around the herb garden, and it looks so good. I'm just so tickled I can't stop smiling. Actually, I didn't come out here last night because it was too dark to be able to make a video, and I wanted to be able to make a video. So this is my first time out here to see it, like, up close. I mean, obviously I looked out the front door and was watching, but yeah, it looks so good. He moved my Mother's Day rooster in. You know, I was throwing around fancy names for him, and I said something about Jean-Luc, and Jeremiah was like, yeah, you could call him Jean-Luc because he's a Trekkie, but someone said Jean-Luc Peckyard, and I was like, heck yes, you win. Jean-Luc Peckyard. Here we have the space that's going to be like a seating area. I went into Walmart yesterday to see what they had for seating, and I didn't find anything that would really work. You know, a lot of the nice outdoor seating has cushions and all that stuff, and I don't really want to do anything that's got cushions because we do get pretty frequent rain here, which is great. It means gardens grow really well, but with this not being covered, I just don't want to have anything that's got cushions on it. I've got these two chairs that I got when we first moved here. I'd found them somewhere like on a closeout, and they have cushions attached, and they're pretty wrecked at this point from just being outside. I think maybe this weekend I may just like hop around to see if I can find any garage sales. I really prefer to find outdoor furniture used, because if you can find the stuff that is strong enough to withstand one person using it long enough to want to get rid of it, you know it's gonna last. And it's significantly cheaper. Outdoor furniture is just expensive, and so I'm just gonna kind of take my time a little bit and see if I can find something great. I'm not gonna rush, but yeah, it looks so good in here. This is actually my first cup of coffee to bring out here and enjoy first thing in the morning. I woke up and I was so excited to get out here. So I just brought 2 roses out here that I'm gonna plant on these corners. I was trying to finish my coffee before I got into planting anything, because as soon as I start, this will lie forgotten until it's cold and filled with bugs. I ordered these roses. I actually ordered a couple others too, which I'm very excited about. These are from Heirloom Roses. I've ordered from them before. I don't have any sort of affiliation, but I mean, I will link their website, but if you guys want to check them out. But they had a sale right before Mother's Day, and I ordered these. Now, if you have been with me for very long, you may recall, in Arkansas, over the entry of my garden, I had the most gorgeous orangey coral roses that were so fragrant. They were so healthy and strong, and I absolutely loved them. They were called Tangerine Skies Arbor Roses. And Maya and the boys picked them up for me actually for Mother's Day one year at like just, I don't know if it was Lowe's or Home Depot, something like that. And I planted them there the first year, and I actually almost pulled them out the first year because they were taking so long to grow that I was like, oh, I really want this arbor to be covered over the entryway, and maybe I should move the roses and put something fast growing here. And I'm so glad I didn't, because it ended up covering that gate in such an extraordinary way. So I actually ordered for the gate in my big garden more Tangerine Skies. Like, that's got to be one of my favorite roses of all time. I've desperately missed it, being the entry point to my garden, but I didn't want to get ahead of myself. I wanted to like build the garden before we put the buttoned up feature. So, you know, we're going to get that in this year. But I actually decided I would try a different kind of arbor rose here for the entry of this garden. This one is called I think it's Jasmina. One of the letters is missing, but I'm pretty sure it was Jasmina. So Arbor Rose is a line, and one of the things I really liked about it is they grow on their own roots. They're just really healthy. And I'm actually just gonna plant these in the end of the 2 raised beds that flank this gate. And we're actually gonna build like an arbor around it. So basically, the gate will be kind of on the outside of the arbor, and the roses will grow right here on the inside. And it will take it will take a year at least for them to really start picking up, but I'm going to go ahead and put them in the soil now so that they can start growing roots, and we'll get some growth as the year goes on. But obviously we don't have the arbor built yet. That's fine. We can go ahead and plant the roses. They're not going to grow that fast that they'll need it within the next week. You know, we'll have a little time to build it. When I first planted the plants in these, I kind of thought, well, I'll leave the space, but we had considered maybe putting the arbor kind of on the outside of the fence. But I'm going to stick with it like this. I may have to move some of these echinaceas in the future, but for this year, it'll be completely fine. So I've got one plant for each side. Obviously, the arbor is going to go up and over, and these will eventually grow all over that. I actually had a comment the other day I thought was a really interesting idea, but I'm not going to do what this person asked just because I need to do what really works for us. But somebody had said, I thought you were going to plant that garden as if that was your only garden. Like, show this little garden, like what a person could do in a backyard garden. And I said I was going to plant this green stalk as if it were my only green stalk, and I think that's where that idea had come from. And I'm not going to do that because I still have to go take care of that really big garden, and it takes a whole lot of time. And so splitting those things up, like if I have to prune all the tomatoes, I need them to be all close together. Having them down here, just the way my brain works, this garden would not thrive if I were to try to do that. I would need to be my only garden for me to really be able to nail that with everything else I have going on. However, I have looked at this garden and thought, like, what would I do if this were my only garden? And you could grow such a significant amount of food in a garden like this. So I can tell y'all what I would do if this were my only garden. As it is, you know, I've got like this whole bed full of lavender. I've got that whole bed full of echinacea. I'm doing, you know, I've got lots of different herbs over here that are gonna fill out. And primarily this is entirely herbs and tea. I am gonna do my potato grow bags that I'm experimenting with down here, just because this garden gets more shade than my other garden does. It still is technically full sun because it has at least 6 hours of sun in a day. It's overall going to be a lot shadier and therefore a lot cooler, and things won't dry out as fast. So I'm thinking the potato grow bags may thrive a little better down here than up there. If this were my only garden, I'll tell you what I'd do. On these two long beds that are 2 feet wide, I would plant tomatoes right down the middle. I would do cattle panels. These are each 10 feet, so I would have to cut 6 feet off of those cattle panels. And I would just grow, let's see, about 8 tomato plants in each one, prune them down to a main leader. And then along the foot of those tomatoes, I would grow radishes at the beginning of the season to kind of use that space before the tomatoes got big. I would probably dedicate one bed to sweet peppers and one bed to hot peppers. Peppers like to be grown close together, so in these 7 by 2 foot configured beds, I think I could probably do about 14 plants in each. When you're growing things close together like that, like when I'm talking about the tomatoes being grown close together, the biggest thing with tomatoes is you have to give them airflow. The biggest thing with growing peppers close together like that is you just have to make sure you have rich soil. The reason why things struggle when they're really close together, when the soil is poor, is they're just fighting for nutrients and they're fighting for water. So if you can provide ample nutrients and ample water, you can grow things like that close together. And peppers really like being grown close together. So in a 2 foot bed, I would just do 1 pepper, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down. In one of these beds, I would do a trellis, like a piece, one of those leftover 6 foot pieces of a cattle panel down one side, and grow pole beans. Pole beans grow throughout the year, whereas bush beans all come on at once. So if you want to do canning, bush beans are great to grow like a really long row of bush beans, because then you can get a huge bucket full, take them in your kitchen, can them all that day. You've got them all at once. But if you're wanting to harvest beans for dinner, just to saute up with as a side for your dinner, or throw in soup or something like that, doing pole beans is good because they just keep setting flowers. As long as you're supporting them and providing them water and nutrition, they're going to keep producing. So I would do one bed with a trellis for pole beans. And then I would come up, obviously these beds are pretty close together, so I don't know that I could do like a full arch. Now you could have spread this out. The reason I put these close together with the plan of weed eating rather than mowing is because this fence is expensive, and I wanted to keep the footprint of this garden a little on the smaller side and fit as much planting space as I could within this footprint. But you really need at least 3 feet between your beds to arch a cattle panel over. But you could come up with something to arch it here. It would just be a little bit harder to do. But I would potentially do some sort of vertical trellis thing and grow like a cantaloupe or Kajari melon, some sort of like little personal sized melon. Now mind you, we still have half this bed that's not growing the bush beans. I would probably put in more root vegetables at the base of that. Maybe a nice long row of beets. Of course, those would have to be sown earlier in the season for me because it's so hot here. And in the bed with my personal melon that is trellised to grow up, I would grow a few eggplants and maybe stick some flowers in there because we got to think about the pollinators. Maybe some zinnias. In this corner, I would put a trellis up in the corner and grow cucumbers. And then along the edge of the bed here, I would throw in some herbs like basil. In one of these beds, I would put a couple of summer squash plants. And in another bed, I would plant, let's see, you could probably do about 5 okra plants, 1 in each corner and 1 in the middle. These are 3 by 3 foot beds. In this bed here, right by the edge, I would just dedicate this entirely to herbs, especially the staples like an oregano and thyme, maybe a rosemary plant there on the end that would last year after year. I would, if this were my only garden and I was doing all of this, I would put the perennial herbs all together in one bed. So I could feed them and care for them and prune them back and then, you know, kind of more reset the rest of the beds and be able to mix up my planting year after year if I wanted to. But yeah, that's what I would do if this were my only garden. And because I don't mind a mess, you know, I may end up tucking like a watermelon seed kind of on the edge here, close to the end of the gate, to allow a watermelon to grow all out into the ground. But I know a lot of people don't like a mess the way that I do, so I understand some people might not want to do that. And then of course I would put potatoes in grow bags, much like I'm going to in this garden. I would add, you know, a couple of green stalks maybe to be able to maximize space. I mean, you can see right here what I've got in this green stalk. I've got a lot of tomatoes. I have to take the little hat off my green stalk when I'm filming because I use it to put my camera in. You can see here all the fruit on this. I'm definitely not wanting for production in this thing this year. It's pretty wild. Oh, look, there's a couple. I'll take one. I'm going to tell Ben that there is another tomato out here. He's been asking me every day if there have been any more tomatoes. My other reasoning for all the perennial herbs in one space is that those do grow throughout the year for me. And everything that I mentioned in here, aside from like the beets and the radishes, which is something I would plant like early on, like when I was first putting the rest of the stuff in. And I would be harvesting those things by like June as all the rest of the stuff got big. At the end of the season, when it's like everything's kind of petering out and getting sick and the plants have pretty much succumbed to the stresses of the heat, that's what I have to deal with. I would tear this all out in about September and then plant the whole thing for overwinter, and then grow kale and cabbages, snap peas and broccoli, and then all the root vegetables like carrots, more beets, rutabagas, turnips, kohlrabi would be a really great thing to grow. And I could do all of that over the fall and early winter in this garden and then continue producing a lot of food. So this is a 20 by 24 foot space. I've got 2 by 10 foot beds. These are all Birdie's beds from Epic Gardening. I have 5 2 by 7 foot beds and 3 3 by 3 foot. So it's 2 larges, 5 mediums, and 3 smalls of the low beds. This probably would not be enough space to provide just a ton for preserving. You could probably preserve some off this, especially if you fit, you know, 16 tomato plants in. I mean, that gives you plenty for fresh eating and extra that you're going to have to figure out something to do with it. You definitely would be making salsa and sauces out of that and potentially being able to can a little bit or freeze some to have later. But as far as a fresh eating garden, even for my large family, this could provide a lot of what we need. And honestly, I feel like for people who are just getting started in gardening, I know that everybody wants to go till an acre. The number of people that I talk to, they're like, yeah, we're starting our farm, we're going to go till an acre. Like, a lot of people want to do that. And here's the thing, you can. Like, you can do it. And you'll probably grow a lot. And the thing is when you plant a whole lot, you end up with a lot, even if a lot goes to weeds, even if a lot goes to pests, even if you can't keep up with it, simply by the force of numbers, because you put so much in. But if you're really wanting to keep like a tidy, very tended garden, and you don't want to feel overwhelmed by it, starting with a space like this that is totally manageable. I could easily manage this entirely by myself without having help. And honestly, I think that's a really great way to learn to not be terribly overwhelmed, to you know, learn the lessons on a small scale, and then if you so desire, translate those to a larger scale, you know, down the road. All right, I'm done with my coffee. Let's plant the roses. Alright, just to point out, in case anybody saw this, and I want to make sure anyone new knows, this has a little zip tie on it. That was holding the compostable bag. It was like keeping the soil together. I'm going to cut those off. I just don't have anything out here right now to cut them. So make sure if you're planting something, you don't accidentally like plant that where you're not going to see it, because it will eventually. Right now, obviously, there's plenty of space. Eventually, the trunk of these roses is going to be very large, and that could become restrictive to it and hurt it. But yeah, there they are. Future beauty. Oh, one thing I did, because of y'all's feedback, I had several people tell me I had planted my Russian tarragon and my French tarragon right next to each other, and several people told me that Russian tarragon was way more just hardier and stronger growing than French, and that it may overtake it. So I actually moved them and put them down on separate ends of the bed so there wouldn't be any competition. And then this is, I'm pretty sure it's a verbena. He's looking kind of sad right now. I put him in yesterday and give him some water. Overall, I do really feel like the plants in here are looking good. You know, we had all that rain right after I planted, and everything looked just a little pale, slightly sickly, which is not surprising because when it's raining super hard, plants just can't take up nutrients. You know, when days go by that they're just getting inundated with water, they just get a little undernourished because all they're getting is water, essentially. There's no time for it to soak anything up out of the soil. But since the last couple of days, since it stopped raining, everything's greening up, which is nice. I don't see a ton of new growth yet. That'll take a little bit. Everything's got to kind of start getting roots. But the fact that, like, I got to put all these zinnias in, and after the first few days, because it was just raining nonstop, they were just all like very pale green and laid over. Well, now they're standing up and they're a little darker, so we should have new growth soon. I'm actually debating one thing, and I would love your input on it. So back in this corner, I had planned on putting a Rosa rugosa, like a rose hip rose, and I had a few people tell me that rugosa roses get really large. If I put it in the corner of that bed, it has a few feet to like really fill out, and if it comes over into the walkways, it's not a terribly big deal because I can reach everything I need to reach without that. But I don't want to have to prune that rose back a lot, like while it's growing. Like, obviously I'll prune it every winter for new growth each year, but I don't want to have to cut off like fresh growth because I'm growing it for rose hips. So I need, like, I want more of the rose bush to be there so I get more rose hips. So I'm kind of toying with potentially putting ginger in that bed instead and finding another place to put, you know, to grow rose hips. I don't know, what do you think? I just love the idea of that beautiful rose back there kind of anchoring this garden with flowers. I just can't decide. I have ordered the rose. I have obviously plenty of other places to put it if I don't put it there. And then I have other places where I'm growing ginger, so but I think ginger would look really cool back there, and it would also kind of be nice to just have some in this space. So what's your opinion? Rose, ginger? I will tell you that this point, like where this garden is, this is my kryptonite as a gardener. Because when I put all these little plants in and seeds in, and all I can see is all this space that's showing, I just want to keep putting more stuff in. Like, I have overplanted so many gardens, and then very sadly, when everything starts filling out and competing and things start shading each other out and fussing, I end up having to pull plants out and move them, or very sadly, if I don't have a place to put them, I end up having to pull plants out and give them to somebody else and not have them in my garden. So I'm really trying to like exercise control against myself and not overplant this, to wait, because these herbs really are going to fill out. This space is going to be very lush, very full in just a couple of months. This is going to be completely transformed. You really won't be able to see a lot of soil. It's going to be full just with what I've planted now. I have a couple of empty spaces. I've got one here and one there. I have a pineapple sage plant that I'm going to put in one of these spaces that will get really big, and then I'm trying to think if there's anything else I have forgotten in here that I should put in. I'm going to put in, you know, another one of the places. And I may, in this bed that's mostly flowers, I've got more zinnia seeds in. I think I may tuck a couple of sunflower seeds down on the end. Oh, I remember what the other option was, other than just rose and ginger. I could also grow a passion fruit plant on that corner, and it would go all along the fence, I think. I have grown it. It climbs, it goes wild, grows amazing here. Maypop is what some people call it. It's very good for tea, but I don't know if it will do as well on that low fence. So that was another thing I wanted to ask y'all. What do you think? So I could potentially do the maypop in that corner, and I love the idea of it climbing along the fence. That is just very romantic. Or, you know, I could how do y'all stand me? I could put the maypop in this corner, just move a few of the zinnias over and let it go all along there, because it primarily, if I train it, is going to want to climb. If I don't train it, it'll go all over the beds and be everywhere in a mess, but I'll try to keep it tidy for the sake of a tidy garden. I'm really trying to like rein this one in. Can y'all see? Can y'all tell that I'm like, I'm putting myself in check? What would y'all do if this was your garden? How would you use it? Thank y'all for hanging out with me today for my first cup of coffee in my new garden. My first morning cup of coffee. I've had quite a few afternoon cups of coffee. Look at me, reining it in, taking my mug inside like a real good grown-up. God bless you guys. Until next time.